spectrum frontiers. Riding hard, standing tall. From the heart of the people to the rise and the fall. Full spectrum frontiers. Where the stories ignite. Guarding tomorrow with grit in the fight.
All right, everybody. Thanks for coming to Full Spectrum Frontiers. I've got a repeat guest today who really doesn't need an introduction, but we'll let him introduce himself. It's Brad Thompson from Clemson University. Welcome to Full Spectrum Frontiers, Brad.
Hey, Ben, it's great to see you and see you again and to be with your audience.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us a little about yourself, and then what is the best place for people to find you?
Sure. Yeah. So I am executive director of the Snow Institute for the Study of Capitalism at Clemson University. I'm also a professor of political philosophy in the Department of Political Science. And if people want to find me on social media, I'm on X. My account name is, I don't know, it's like C. Bradley Thompson 1 or something, but just search C. Bradley Thompson. And but the place where I'd love them most to come and see me is on my Substack, which they can just get to by Googling the Redneck Intellectual.
I love it. I love it. So how did that name come about? Let's just talk about that real quick.
Yeah, that's actually a good question. I'm just trying to remember now how it came about. So for many, many years, people kept referring to me, or, they would introduce me or talk about me, describe me as a so-called, intellectual. And I never liked being called an intellectual. I have no idea what that means. And there are a lot of people who do call themselves intellectuals. And I'm not so fussy about the fact that if you don't write stuff, then and you're not productive, I'm not sure on what grounds you call yourself a so-called intellectual. And it just seemed to be kind of a little too hoity-toity for me. And so I live pretty close to the Appalachian Mountains, and I think rednecks get a bad rap. So if I'm going to be an intellectual, I might as well be a redneck intellectual.
A redneck intellectual. I love it. I do love it. And it's a great Substack, by the way. So
thank you.
All right. So you are the executive director of the Snow Institute for the Study of Capitalism. And what makes the Snow Institute different from other economics or like political philosophy centers that are on American campuses?
Yeah. So there are a lot of university-based teaching and research centers dedicated to free markets, free enterprise, capitalism, but all of them are, or at least almost all of them are run by economists, and they do the work of economists, right? And their job is to demonstrate that capitalism is the most productive and efficient economic system ever devised by man, which it is, and they're right on that. And all of these think tanks do great work. I deeply admire what they do. But there's a problem. And the problem is that even Karl Marx knew that capitalism is the most productive and efficient economic system. And he said so. And he said so in the Communist Manifesto. The problem, of course, is that over the course of the last 100+ years, Marx and his descendants have captured the moral high ground. And their position, right, is that capitalism, yeah, it's productive, it's efficient. The problem is that it's immoral and unjust. And so they captured the moral high ground. And certainly starting in the post-World War II era, following in the footsteps of people like Milton Friedman, more conservative and libertarian economists began to sort of try to recapture the economic high ground. The problem, however, is that in any battle of ideas, between morality and economics. Over the long term, morality always wins, which I think is why this country has been going down the road to serfdom very slowly, but going down the road to serfdom, to use Hayek's term, for decades. And so what we're trying to do is to recapture the moral high ground. And the mission of the Snow Institute, and we were renamed the Snow Institute for the Study of Capitalism last year because of an extraordinary gift from David and Lynette Snow. And so we are now the Snow Institute. We had previously been the Clemson Institute for the Study of Capitalism. And our mission is to explore the moral foundations of capitalism. Because if capitalism cannot be defended morally, it cannot be defended. And so that's effectively what makes us different from all of the other wonderful free market think tanks. And all of my people, all of my faculty, they're all either historians or moral and political philosophers.
It's great. I mean, because capitalism, it always has the reputation of leading to inequality or exploitation, right? I mean, that's all that you hear coming from the non-capitalist folks. But how do you address those claims, like from a philosophical and historical standpoint? Like,
yeah, so it's
I know that's a big question, but it's
no, it's a big question. So the left will typically argue that capitalism is unjust and immoral. So what's the unjust and what's the immoral? The unjust part is that it leads, as you just said, to inequality, which it does, and it's immoral because it's grounded in self-interest. Which it is. Now, the problem, however, is that, for instance, over the course of the last half century, conservatives have absolutely, and libertarians to a certain degree, have run away from these ideas. They've run away from trying to defend the inequality that comes from capitalism, and they've absolutely tried to run away from the idea that self-interest is at the heart and soul of not only capitalism but of a free society. But let's take each of them in turn. So inequality, it leads to inequality, but name an economic system that doesn't lead to inequality. Of course it leads to inequality, because inequality is wrought into human nature. There will always be inequality, as there has been in every single communist and or socialist nation in the history of the world. But what they forget to tell you is that with capitalism, there may be inequality of wealth, but the fact of the matter is there is a rising tide of wealth for everybody, right? Under a capitalist system, everybody becomes wealthier relative to what they were before, right? And that's what counts the most, right? Is that we become wealthier as a people. We become wealthier. All of us become wealthier in a capitalist economy. And the fact that that Elon Musk just negotiated a $1 trillion contract for himself, like, this is like the greatest news in the world for me. Yeah, I want somebody out there in the world to be making $1 trillion, because, and what we also tend to forget is just the extraordinary wealth that he is creating.
Yeah.
For the economy as a whole, and for all the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who work for him. It's the tide is rising for everybody. And, like, seriously, what do I care if Elon Musk has $1 million, $1 billion, or $1 trillion?
Yeah.
To quote Thomas Jefferson, it neither picks my pocket nor breaks my leg. Right. Yeah. And I also, furthermore, I want to see Like, I want a visible, tangible um, display of what I may get in my life if I work hard and I can improve my life. Now, I'm not going to be a trillionaire. I'm not going to be a millionaire or a billionaire. Maybe, maybe one day I can get I can save enough money after the course of, working for 50 years,
Right.
maybe, but, I mean, to be a millionaire today is really not, frankly,
Not
it's
all it's cracked up to be.
yeah, well, it's not all that it's cracked
No,
up to be, and it's not all that hard, actually.
no,
And
right.
and by being a millionaire, what does that mean? It just means that you have assets, a
Right.
house, right? I mean, anybody who
Yes.
lives in a small bungalow in Southern California, by definition, is a
Is a
millionaire
millionaire.
because their house is worth $1 million, right?
Absolutely.
So anyway, yeah, I completely reject the argument. I want more wealth for everybody. Now, the harder claim um, is that capitalism is grounded in immorality. And what's the immorality of capitalism? The immorality is self-interest. Now, in my view, here's the problem. Yes, absolutely, capitalism is grounded in self-interest, or what Alexis de Tocqueville in Democracy in America called self-interest rightly understood. But um, the notion of self-interest has been the boogeyman of Western moral philosophers and theologians, and really Western culture for 2,500 plus years. Right? Because the suggestion is that self-interest leads to exploitation, uh, and this kind of grasping greed, and that hurts other people at one's own expense, and uh, that's not what self-interest is, right? Even the most altruistic person in the world, or self-proclaimed altruist, because nobody really is an altruist, even though they say they are,
Right.
right? You know, everybody to one degree or another acts upon their self-interest. Of course they do. And
Because
the
you're altruistic as long as you're comfortable.
well, yeah, especially, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
So
I mean, it's no coincidence, right, that the most altruistic people are upper middle class, white, college educated liberals, right?
yeah.
But
Right.
what they really want is they want altruism for everybody else, not
Right.
really for themselves,
Yes.
right? But self-interest, really, the doctrine of self-interest, the moral principle of self-interest, uh, is the most abused moral concept in Western civilization. And I've been writing what's now turning out to be a really long series of essays at the Redneck Intellectual, um, trying to address this question. Um, and and it's a hard problem. I mean, all of us are told from the time we're children, right, that being self-interested in one way or another, right, is wrong, and that we should be altruistic. And altruism really is a philosophy based on envy and resentment, and and ultimately, right, altruism always effectively altruism ultimately is the philosophy of socialism, right?
Yeah.
It's the taking from Peter to give to Paul, and without any consideration of who Paul is, what he has done. And in many ways, I think the core of altruism can be summed up in a famous phrase of Karl Marx: uh, "From each according to his ability, to each according to his needs." Right? And what that means is, um, Marx recognized that there is an inequality of productive ability, and we should take according to productive ability, like, for instance, in the form of a progressive income tax, and we should give to the needs of others. But then the question is, well, who defines the needs of others, right? And if you satisfy the immediate need of another, well, guess what? It turns out that needs often are inflationary, which is to say, somebody tells you, I have this need, you satisfy it for them, you help them with it, and then all of a sudden their need grows, it expands, right? So needs tend to be inflationary. But in the end, what you need is a middleman in between to decide how much should be taken from person A and given to person B. And it's a system. It's the implementation of altruism politically, by definition, means the coercive use of force to redistribute wealth from Peter to give to Paul.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Absolutely. Let's pivot to what inspired you to create the Lyceum Scholars Program. Like, and what gap in higher education are you hoping to fill with that?
Yeah. So we created the Lyceum program 10 years ago. And let me first tell you what it is, and then try to tell you, why we created it. So it's an academic it's a scholarship and an academic program. And the academic program uses a great books approach to studying the history of liberty, capitalism, the American founding, and the principles of moral character. And there's no other program in America like it. And we have 8 courses that we run, run by the Institute here at Clemson University. And we have been until this year, we were taking 10 students per year. Now we've just doubled it to 20. They were given a scholarship of $2,500 per year. We've just increased it to $15,000 per year. So it's an extraordinary program. Now let me double back and answer the question that you led with, which is how and why did we start it? So, the program was started 10 years ago. I started thinking about it maybe 12 years ago. And I just recognized that there was a need for this kind of a program. We didn't have anything quite like it at Clemson. And frankly, I just wanted my students to be able to take these kinds of classes, to get this kind of an education. So, fortunately, my colleagues in the political science department supported the creation of all these courses. And then once we got all the courses in the department signed, sealed, and delivered, then I was able to really just put a bow on this package of courses. And then I went out and I raised money for the scholarships, and Shazam, we had the Lyceum program. And that first year, for a program that nobody in America knew anything about, and at that time I just had 2 colleagues, 2 administrative colleagues, and we literally had no idea what we were doing. And just to be clear for your audience, this is a 4-year program. So to get into it, you have to apply as a high school senior.
Right.
And so we had to learn very, very quickly how to market this program that, as I said, nobody in America knew anything about. And that first year, and we really just didn't know what we were doing. I mean, we were literally making it up every single day as we were going along, just trying to figure out how to market the program. That first year, I was expecting 30 to 50 applications. And to our great amazement, we had 190 applications from high school students in 20 states. Fast forward to last year, we had over 1,000 applications from students in, I think, over 45 states. So the program has just exploded. And what that tells us is that there is a yearning, burning desire out there in the public for this kind of an education, because clearly they're not getting it at their local universities. And I think that, I mean, there are lots of reasons why they're not getting it at their local universities or at almost any universities in the United States. But I will also say that a part of the demand for this, right? So there are two things happening all at once. On the one hand, America's colleges and universities are collapsing intellectually. All right, they've essentially they have introduced two major ideas, or not, they're not so much ideas, but policies, namely censorship of ideas and indoctrination of ideas, right? And most people don't want that for their children. And more particularly, the kinds of people who do not want that for their children um, are this new rising tide of Americans who are educating their children with a classical education, that is through a classical curriculum. And the classical curriculum right now I believe it is the dominant form of education in the homeschool world. We see there's been a serious uptick in the number of both private and charter classical schools. So anyway, on the demand side, there was huge demand for this kind of education that was not being served at 99% of American universities, right? So we created, having recognized the demand, we created the supply. And so we launched this program, and if you don't mind, let me just share with you and your audience the curriculum.
Yeah, that's
Because
actually what I was just going to ask you about.
yeah,
So go ahead.
yeah, great. I mean, the curriculum is I'm really proud of it. So let me repeat: we use a great books approach to studying the history of liberty, capitalism, the American founding, and the principles of moral character. And to that end, we have this 8-course curriculum. Freshman year, they take a course called Wisdom of the Ancients, which is a course in ancient Greek and Roman moral thought. They read Plato, Aristotle, Cicero, Seneca, Epictetus. Then in the second semester, they do a course called Introduction to Political Theory. And that's a typical introduction to political theory class: Plato, Aristotle, Machiavelli, Locke, etc., Nietzsche. And then in their second year, they do a course called American Political Thought. And then second semester, a course called Political Theory of Capitalism, which is the only such course, I think, in the United States. And then in their junior year, they do a course titled Modern Political Thought. And then second semester, they do a course on the political thought of the American Revolution. Senior year, first semester course on political thought of the American founding, as distinguished from the American Revolution. So that's the creation of the Constitution, and then going up through the 1790s and beyond. And then finally, second semester senior year, they do the capstone course, which is Wisdom of the Moderns, which is a course in modern moral thought. And it's a mostly a literature-based course. And over the years, we changed the reading list, but they've read Shakespeare, Adam Smith, Jane Austen, um, they've read Hawthorne's Scarlet Letter. They've read Herman Melville's Billy Budd, Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, and Ayn Rand's novel The Fountainhead. So that's the curriculum. And it's just been a massive success. And in fact, so it's been such a success, Bennett, that after the first couple of years, when ordinary Clemson students started hearing about the program, they were beating down my door asking, well, how can I get in the Lyceum program? And I had to tell them, I'm sorry, you can't. You had to have applied as a high school senior. And so they would walk away disappointed. And that just sort of gnawed on me for a time. So then I had my sort of aha moment, and we created a parallel track program called the Lyceum Fellows Program.
Nice.
Yeah, and the Fellows Program is for ordinary Clemson students who hear about the program once they get to Clemson. And the only difference between the Scholars Program and the Fellows Program is, one, the Fellows unfortunately do not get a scholarship, and but they take 6 classes instead of 8 classes, and it's much more flexible. They can also do them in whatever order they want, whenever they
Gotcha.
want. Whereas the scholars have to do it as a cohort, in order, lock, stock, and barrel.
I love how it's so heavily focused on primary texts. It's awesome. And instead of, you find that a lot of times in school, stuff is it's a filtered interpretation
Right.
of these ideas. And if, the book is there, just have them read it. That's one of the things that stands out to me about it all. And I love that you've opened up that program so it allows them to get people to get the knowledge because they want it, not because of a scholarship too,
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, to be honest, in the early years, well, not even so much in the early years, for the first 10 years, the scholarship was $2,500 per year.
Yeah.
Right. That's nothing. Like, in the
No,
context
right.
of
In the
today,
grand scheme of school, it's not.
right? That's just on the
Yeah.
margin. And
Yeah.
if you were an out-of-state student,
Right.
um, paying out-of-state tuition, $2,500 is nothing. So the kids that we were getting, particularly the ones out of state, they were not coming for the scholarship, right?
Yeah.
They were coming for the education. And the education is, yeah, there's just no, I mean, there are a few other great books programs in the United States, but they don't quite have the focus we do on capitalism, liberty, the American founding, and the principles of moral character.
Yeah.
And then the one thing that they absolutely do not have, right? And in fact, no other university in the world has what we have in the Lyceum program at Clemson, and that is, we have something called the Socratic Tutor Program. And every one of our students in the Lyceum Scholars Program gets what we call a Socratic tutor, who is a faculty member connected with the program. And the Socratic tutor will be assigned each semester, 5, 6, maybe 7 students. And his tutees will meet with him or her every other week for at least 1 hour. The purpose of which is twofold. The first is to help these young men and women start thinking about how to translate the ideas that they're learning in these very difficult books. So, for instance, if you're 17 or 18 years old and you're reading Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics for the first time, right? The question is, how do you apply the ideas in this book to your life here, now, today? And that's the trick, because we don't believe in the Lyceum program that reading great books, that reading Plato and Aristotle is simply an exercise in abstract reasoning.
Yeah.
We don't want our kids, living in the clouds, just philosophizing, as it were. Right? We want them to be able to live out these ideas and these principles in their lives here now today. So that's the first purpose of the Socratic Tutor Program. And the second, which is ultimately the most important, is to get these young men and women to start thinking seriously and deeply, usually for the first time in their lives, about the question of moral character and their moral character in particular. Most of these kids, well, really virtually all of these kids that are coming to us as freshmen, their entire moral universe has been framed for them by, first, most importantly and obviously, by their parents, and then if they go to church, by their church, and then by their school, and then by their friends or what they see on TV. And when a 17 or 18-year-old goes to college for the first time, uh, it's these young men and women are setting out on an odyssey, right? It's a journey. And it's the first time that they've left home for any significant period of time, maybe more than a week or two.
Yeah.
And now they're leaving home and they're being introduced to an entirely different universe. And for the first time in their lives, they have to make choices based on simply on what they think is right or wrong. And of course, they're also being bombarded with lots of ideas that are counter to what their parents taught them and to what they learned either at church or at school or from their community. And they got to sort this out, right? And let's face it, I mean, we all know that lots of young men and women who are in college make a lot of bad choices, right? And which is okay. That kids will make dumb choices, and that's a part of growing up. But we want to help them. We just want to help them to think more seriously about the kinds of choices they make and what it means. We want them to always have tucked away in the back of their minds, the question, what is the good life? What is the good life for me? What is the best way to live? What is moral excellence? What does that look like? Not just as an abstraction, but as something they actually live their lives by. So let me give you a concrete example of how this works. So young Bennett Tanton comes into my office. 17, 18-year-old Bennett Tanton comes into my office, freshman, just starting out at Clemson University. And literally, after we've just exchanged a few pleasantries, you sit down, I say, so tell me, Mr. Tanton, what is courage? And the first response is, well, I usually ask that question to freshmen first semester because it's just when they're reading Aristotle.
Right.
They're reading Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. So the first thing they do, without fail, is to give me Aristotle's definition of what courage is. And then I say, no. Mr. Tanton, I've read Aristotle before. I know what Aristotle says. Let's not talk about what any book says about courage. Just let's talk about real life, right? In your own life, have you experienced courage? Have you seen it? Right? Have you did you see it at high school? Right? Have you seen it in television, in movies? And so then the juices start to flow. So
Right.
yeah, so I ask, well, give me 3 or 4 instances from your life where you have seen courage, right? And so they'll give me several examples, and I say, oh, and of course these examples will be different. Often, certainly the young men will almost always uniformly, young men will speak of courage in battle.
In battle, right? Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. First place I go.
Yeah, of course. And that's a part of what courage is. No, there's no question. And so we talk about that, right? So that's an example, right? So, but then there are other examples, right, that do not involve courage in battle, right? And one example is standing up for your principles, um, in very difficult situations where it would be really easy to not live by your principles, right? And so we try to get 4 or 5 different examples, and then from those different examples, I want my students to think inductively, and we want to draw out of these different examples the common characteristics between these different examples, right? So that eventually we can try and identify a definition that matches that helps to explain all of these 4 or 5 different examples of what courage is. And the kids, they take it seriously, and I think they find this to be a really kind of interesting exercise. And we do this with all kinds of questions. What is justice?
Yeah.
What is freedom? What is love? All kinds of questions. And and by the way, just to go back to the courage question, the real example that I want them to talk about and think through relative to courage is standing up for one's principles, right? In real life, and 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 the fact of the matter is, a lot of people don't. A lot of people compromise. Well, then the question is, well, why do people compromise? And then we'll explore why they compromise. And then eventually what we'll do is, after we've explored how and why they compromise, what we might find out that these people, that even my students, and I'll call them out on this, is that they're ultimately moral cowards.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And so we talk about, well, what does that mean? What is moral cowardice as opposed to moral courage? Right. And sometimes for a lot of these kids, because nobody wants to be a coward.
No.
Right. And once you identify what moral cowardice is, once they know what it is, because oftentimes they don't really know what it is. I mean, it is kind of, we shouldn't be surprised, right? That
Yeah.
17 and 18-year-olds haven't really thought very seriously and deeply about much of anything.
Yeah.
Right.
Let alone moral strength.
Yeah. And particularly young men. Aristotle once said of teenage men that they're defective human beings, which we know is true.
Yes.
And you and I know it's true because we once were teenagers.
Yes.
Right. And that's, and so that's what we're doing in the Lyceum program, is we're taking defective young men and women. And by defective, I mean, sort of, I'm putting a very sharp point on it.
Yep.
But we're trying to get them to recognize their intellectual and moral vices, and then to get them to work on them, to become better people.
Yeah.
Right. And by better people, I don't mean, for instance, better by the time they graduate from college. I mean better in 10 years. Because one of the questions that I ask my students in our Socratic tutor sessions is, what is the best version of yourself in 10 years? So, I might have a graduating senior. I usually don't ask that of freshmen, but I certainly ask this question of graduating seniors. What's the best version of yourself in 10 years? And, so it gives them a kind of an end point to think about. And, we talk about, and their answer the first time when you ask the question is, well, I want to get married. I want to have kids. I want to have a good job. Well, and I tell them, no, that's not really what I mean. What's the best version of yourself morally in 10 years? Right? I mean, in other words, what are your moral vices today that you want to work on, so that in a decade from now, when you are getting married and having kids, so that you can be, let's say if you're a young man, you can be a good husband, a good father, a good little league coach.
Yes.
That's, and if that's all we do is produce good fathers, good husbands, good little league coaches, then we will have done something good.
Yeah, I look at it as a program that helps people um become better humans earlier than they would in our society as of now. I mean, because you're focusing on those hard things that people don't think about, nor are too many of them taught, or maybe they are, but they don't know why. Right.
Right.
And this gives them the why, in my opinion. So,
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I mean, that's certainly what we're trying to do. I think, yeah,
yeah.
that's exactly right. That's a nice way of putting it. We're trying to give them the why.
Yeah. So I know that there's more going on at Snow than Lyceum, even though that's the big boy on the block. What are some of the new programs that you guys have got going on?
Yeah. So let me just first say, before I tell you about the new programs, we are in the process right now of doubling the number of scholars. And we want to double the number of fellows in the program, and then we want to triple it, and then eventually quadruple it. I mean,
Wow.
we want to have hundreds and hundreds
Yeah.
of.
How many graduates do you have already?
Oh gosh, it's a good question.
Because you've
I
been
mean,
doing it 10 years,
yeah. So
couple thousand and change.
I no, it's probably not that high because we didn't start the fellows program until a few years in, and then it took us a long time to
Yeah.
build it up. And we like most programs, we do have a small attrition rate. Some
Right.
kids, for whatever reason, decide that it's the program's not for them. But you know, hundreds, a couple hundred, maybe
Yeah.
something like
I was
that.
just
So
wondering.
yeah. And let me also say, I'm sorry, but I have one thing I want to really brag
Oh,
on
sure.
before I get to your question. Just to give you and your audience a sense of what this program does for young people. Let me tell you about some of our successes with our students. So, in just the last 4 years, we have produced one winner of the Rhodes Scholarship, the most prestigious scholarship in the world, two Fulbright scholars, the most prestigious scholarship in the United States. We've had students at both Harvard and University of Chicago law schools. We have two students serving on as clerks on the Federal Court of Appeals, and we have one student, I'm proud to say, one of our graduates, who is a clerk on the Supreme Court of the United States.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean it's amazing. We have two getting masters at Oxford, one at Cambridge, and I think we have 10 right now, and these are just recent graduates, right?
Yeah.
10 in PhD programs.
Amazing.
So it's been, yeah,
Successful.
yeah, it's been very very successful. All right. Now on to the new programs.
Yeah.
And we've got two big ones. One that we're launching this year, and then the other one will be in a couple of years. So the first one that we're launching this year is going by the name of the American Founding Project, but it will soon morph into the Clemson Center for the Study of the American Founding. And our goal is to be America's premier university-based teaching and research center dedicated to the study of the American founding. And the reason that we're doing this is because the study of the American Revolution, the American founding, is dying on college campuses. And so we want to resurrect it, and we're going to launch this coming summer our first major program of this American Founding Project. It's going to be called the John Adams Fellows Program, and we're going to invite 10 graduate students or postdocs to Clemson for what we're calling a Founders Boot Camp. And it's going to be an intensive 2-week boot camp, Marine style, on the founders. We're going to put them through their paces, and they'll be working all day, all night, getting an intensive crash course on the ideas and institutions created by America's founding fathers. And then once we get that going, then we'll invite a couple of students, top students, back to be George Washington Fellows, to finish their dissertations and launch their careers. We're also going to be involved in designing curricula for K-12 schools in the United States, and then we'll have a visiting scholars program for senior scholars to found. And then in a couple of years, we're going to launch what we're calling Capitalism Unleashed, which will be a kind of outward-looking program, not so much for Clemson people, but we want to educate. We have a target audience. The target audience is 18 to 35-year-old, sort of Gen Z and late stage millennials.
Yeah.
And we want to educate them on the principles and institutions of capitalism, because, as you know, capitalism is and has been, for more than decades, more than a century, under assault.
Yeah, it's just a naughty word.
Yeah, no, it's horrible.
As soon as I bring up capitalism, some of my friends are just like, oh, they can't even handle it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so, well, to turn a phrase, we're going to make capitalism great again.
Yes.
And so this is going to be a program that, we will have, we're going to have a podcast on the merits of capitalism, both economic, moral, and political. And we're going to design curricula again for high schools. We're going to create a website, which will be a one-stop shopping resource for all things capitalism. It'll be kind of an aggregator website where we bring together podcasts and blogs and news.
All the ideas.
Yeah, all the ideas on capitalism.
Capitalism Clearinghouse. Be
Yeah, there you
awesome.
go.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, I like that. Capitalism Clearinghouse. So those are the new programs we've got launched, and or will be launching in the next couple of years.
I mean, students seem hungry for this stuff once they're exposed to it.
They do. They are absolutely hungry for it, and sometimes they don't even know they're hungry for it. Right. And we see this, I think, in the state of the world today. And I mean, in the last 2 weeks, two really big, important, and very ominous things have happened in this country. The first was the election of Zohran Mamdani in New York City, America's first communist mayor. And this is kind of extraordinary.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a genuinely ominous sign of what's to come. And I will tell you that, the election of Mamdani, I was not angry that Zohran Mamdani was elected. On some level I was, but I was not angry with him.
Right.
Nor was I angry with the upper middle class, white, liberal, college educated 20-somethings who voted for him. Nor was I angry with the radicalized professors at Columbia, NYU, City College of New York.
Every school in New York.
Yeah. I wasn't angry with those professors for indoctrinating their students, nor was I angry with the Ford Foundation and other big money foundations for funding to the tune of tens of millions of dollars get out the vote, left-wing get out the vote organizations, and nor was I angry with those organizations. Who was I angry with then? For the election of Zoran Mamdani, I was angry with all of the conservative, libertarian, classical, liberal organizations that have failed over the course of the last several decades to provide a moral defense of capitalism, right? And we saw that play out in the election. I mean, neither Curtis Sliwa nor who was the other guy that ran for Cuomo.
Yeah.
Cuomo, right?
Yeah,
Neither
well,
of them.
we know where he comes from.
Yeah, I mean, well, like what arguments did they provide against socialism other than it doesn't work?
Yeah.
Well, no kidding, it doesn't work, right? But that going back to what I was saying earlier, right? The fact that it doesn't work doesn't matter to the 20-somethings who voted for him, right? They voted for him because he made the case that it's moral,
Yeah.
right? So that's who I was angry with. All of the conservative, libertarian, classical, liberal think tanks that for generations have not provided the moral defense, and furthermore have not spoken. And this goes to the next big issue that's kind of crashed onto the news, at least on my news feed for the last week, and that is there is a generation of young people, Zoomers and late millennials, right, who just have not been educated, and who they're like a starving beast,
Yeah. They've
and
been beaten over the head that capitalism is bad, if
they have
nothing else. So
they have been, right?
I know I combated that with all of my children, all four of them. It's been the biggest battle that I've ever, and I gladly say that I won it, but it's the battle that I had to fight. And so I can imagine it, when they're hit with stuff every day, wherever they are, from their friends, from their social media, from all of it. It's all clickbait, and capitalism's not sexy or cool. So, I mean, it can be, but it's not. So,
Yeah. So look, we have a generation of lost boys now,
yes.
now young men. But think about it. If you've been told every single day from the day you started kindergarten until you graduated from high school, and then if you went to college, up through your 4 years of college, if you've been told every single day that you are racist, sexist, and homophobic by virtue of being white, male, and heterosexual, right? And nobody in the conservative libertarian establishment has come to your defense, then should we be surprised
No.
that these young men are turning to neo-fascist kooks like Nick Fuentes? No, of course not.
Yeah.
That's on us.
Yeah.
That's not on these
No.
young men and women. That's
It's on us to give them the options, not the, yeah, you're so right.
Look, when you have a generation that is hungry for knowledge and wisdom, and you're not giving it to them, should you be surprised that they're going elsewhere?
Yeah.
And that's where we are today.
Yeah, I would agree. Absolutely. Well, Dr. Thompson, I so appreciate you coming on again and explaining this stuff and getting into it. And I want you to to give a final word and then tell everybody where they can find you again.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what I would say is that we are at a turning point in this country, and the long-term future, indeed the long-term survival of this nation, depends on the decisions that we make right now. And it really is a critical turning point. And I think those people, those Americans who are proponents of a free society, as I am, and as I know you are, right? We have to recapture the moral high ground, and we have to figure out how to educate um, our young people. We have to find out how to educate them, and and I will say that one of the best things that's happened in this country over the course of the last 25 years now has been the rapid rise in homeschooling,
Well,
which
yeah.
I think is the single most important social movement in this country since the civil rights movement in the 1960s. And the leaders of the revolution are America's homeschooling mothers. So 3 cheers for America's homeschooling mothers. And
Agreed.
this is the revolution. But right now I just saw the latest statistic is that 10% of American kids are homeschooled. That's great. But like, I want 50%.
Yeah.
Right. And then more beyond that. And if not that, then, education in classical private and charter schools. Right. That's how we turn the ship around. Right. Ultimately, it's through education. Plato knew this, going back to Plato's Republic, and we've got to find new ways to educate our young, K-12, and then in universities. And then again, just for your audience, if you're interested in my thoughts and views on various subjects, you can find me again at my Substack, The Redneck Intellectual, and that's I think it's theredneckintellectual.com. That's my Substack. And then I also I didn't mention this at the beginning. I have a blog called EdWatch Daily. That's EdWatchDaily, all one word.com. And that's where I blog on, educate K-12
Okay.
and I read
Yeah, we'll put that link in there too.
education issues. And then I have also, in the last 2 years, I've started a press, and it's called Loco Foco Press. And we've now published, I believe, 7 books, and we've got another one that's going to be coming out in the next month or so. We've got a couple others that we're looking at, so check that out. It's loco-foco.com.
Awesome.
And then lastly, if your audience is interested in the Lyceum program, you can just Google Lyceum program at Clemson, and it'll come up.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for coming on again. You're just a wealth of knowledge.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure. I really do enjoy coming on your show. You're a great interviewer.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Carry the fire through shadows and storm. Voices of yesterday guiding us on. Echoes of duty, the call we still hear. Building tomorrow with courage, not fear. Stand your ground, keep the watch through the night. Guarding tomorrow where freedom's alive. Through every trial, the truth will endure. Full spectrum frontiers, steady and sure. From fields of the past to horizons unknown, the seeds that we plant are the future we own. Stories of valor, of lessons we've learned, a legacy carried, a torch ever burned. Stand your